Welcome to the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This podcast is designed to provide momentum in our God-given roles of leadership as we partner together to equip today's Christian leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. Whether you're a pastor, youth leader, ministry volunteer, parent, or student, we want to be your go-to and most trusted resource for equipping and encouragement when it comes to your ministry and leadership influence. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome to today's Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. My name's Eric and I will be your host for this conversation. If you're a new guest to the Momentum podcast, welcome. If you're a return, sup? Thanks for being here. We're glad that you're here. We're glad that you are engaging with this content. Momentum Ministry Partners exist to partner with you and your local church. If you're a ministry professional and wanting to help have resources that would be for you, that would help you be healthy in ministry and thrive to advance God's kingdom, to have maximum impact for his kingdom, we want to help come alongside of you. So check out buildmomentum.org or you can listen to the podcast. So thanks for being here today. This conversation, we have Valerie O'Brien, who is the executive director of Aspen Ministry. Val, welcome.
Thank you, Eric. It's so good to be here. Really, really good to be here. Love what you guys are doing with Momentum. So thankful to be a guest today. Yeah.
Well, you can check out everything about Aspen Ministry. It's aspenministry.org is their website. We'll link to it in the show notes. Val, you've served in student ministry for over 15 years now. I know you mentioned you have a bachelor's degree in Bible and student ministry from Moody Bible Institute. Good job.
Yes,
I love that.
I do.
I got a master's degree through them. They're awesome. And then I saw you have a master's degree in, what did you say, organizational leadership?
Organizational leadership from Regent University in Virginia Beach. So
you go, girl. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And you started Aspen, what, a year ago?
Yes, a little over a year ago, year and a couple months now. So we count the months still. It's like It's like a new baby. You count the months until it's like, 2 years old. Happy birthday. Thank you.
So give our listeners just a brief overview. How would you describe Aspen? What is the goal, the scope, the win of your ministry?
Yeah, no, thank you for asking. So basically what, just a tiny bit of my story leading up to it, because I think that's the way that Aspen makes the most sense.
There you go.
But I was in local church ministry for about 12 years. Loved it. Love the weeds of church ministry. It is my heart. I transitioned in 2020 to doing coaching and training of youth workers. So, the organization I was with, who asked me to join them to do coaching, was like, "You're a woman who's been doing full-time youth ministry for over 10 years. Join us." So nice. I got to do training and coaching of youth workers, which was just such a privilege to get to do that. But I was so aware of where my ministry was when I was in the weeds at the church, what we were struggling with, what we were seeing in students, what we were seeing in families, all that type of stuff. But you always wonder, is this just me? Is this my context? Is this my culture, the culture of my church, culture of my community? Or just me in general? Are these my struggles? When I was doing coaching, I felt like the Lord gave me this opportunity to just be like lifted up and see kind of a wider range of what was happening in student ministry all over the U.S. And just got to see leaders who were great youth workers, like phenomenal youth workers, struggling in some of the same ways that I was struggling. And a lot of that really came down to connecting the message of Jesus with the hearts of students, not in their practices, not in their calendars, anything like that, but the real nitty gritty, but Val, how do we connect with the hearts of kids? It feels like we're missing each other. And at the same time, I was doing a lot of reading and research about Gen Z, Gen Alpha. And one of the things that Kara Powell out of Fuller Youth Institute says that she would hear over and over again from students that she would interview was, "I wish the church would answer the questions I'm actually asking." And I just was so burdened because I'm like, we see kind of the same problem on both sides of this population. We see the youth workers burdened saying, I wish I could connect better with the hearts of these students. They seem so different than they've been in the past.
Mm.
And then we have these young people saying, I wish the church would answer the questions I'm actually asking. So from there, I was just praying and I'm like, Lord, what is my piece in all of this? What do you want me to do? And Aspen Ministry really came out of that burden to try to impact that gap that we see, and to really provide resources and say, in some ways, like, we're trying to figure this out with you. We're actively trying to figure this out with you and provide models of what this can look like and that type of thing. So Aspen Ministry kind of does two different things. We work with students. In the spirit of Kara Powell, we're collecting 10,000 questions from students in their own words, about God, about life, and about faith. And then we categorize them, and we're just looking for trends, and we give youth workers, all of the questions their students ask back, and let that be a resource to them. But then we also take them and look at kind of the macro trends also. And then also we work with churches, with schools, with parachurch organizations, any organization working with young people. And we do primarily workshops and some coaching with them of how do we build a question asking environment in our ministries. And then also, how do we engage the hard questions of students? So how do we create space for them to ask the questions? And then when they do, which is what we want, how do we answer them in a way that shows the goodness of Jesus and doesn't turn them away? How do we give their heart what they're looking for? So that's kind of what Aspen Ministry does. And it has been a wild and wonderful, wonderful year and 4 months. So
I love it.
yeah.
Well, Val, I think the first time that I met you, we talked, we had coffee. We're kind of thinking through, like, first of all, we geeked out on all the student ministry.
We did.
We bonded over our love for the local church and our
did.
love for student ministry. So
Yes.
there's for sure that, and I want our listeners just to understand that that's your heartbeat, that's your passion.
Yes.
So I think the fact that, like, oftentimes as parachurch leaders, we're like, we love, our hearts bleed for the local church. And I want to point out that, like, I think this is true both for you and I, like, we're not leaving the local church because we were burned out or we didn't get let go, but we're like, we want to have maximum impact through the local church, and that's God's plan A. And so how do we come alongside, provide resources, help equip, help even just the like what you said, the questions that people are asking actually to be answered.
Right.
And it's that heartbeat that this podcast exists. So thank you for bringing your passion and sharing it with our listeners.
Well,
I'm excited about the opportunity to really dive in both on both sides of kind of what you just mentioned. Question asking is a big deal. And in student ministry, there's a lot of times where students have questions. Maybe they have doubts. They're wrestling with things. And as adults, as the parents, the pastors, the youth workers, we may not know how to actually engage in the questions that they're asking. So to that end, Val, let's do this. Let's maybe start with the adults.
Yeah.
How would you encourage, if you're kind of teaching, encouraging adults to foster a question asking environment, like kind of that verbiage you were just using? How do you do that? How do you go about coaching them? If you're talking to a youth pastor, if you're talking to a volunteer youth worker, how do you foster an environment where questions can be asked and it's a safe place for that to happen?
Yeah. The thing that I always start with when I talk to youth workers about this very thing is what I have learned the hard way in my own experience. And it may seem a little bit counterintuitive, but I think the first step to cultivating an environment where students feel like they can ask questions is we have to deal with our own questions and our own doubts that we have and the hard places in our own lives. And we have to be honest about those things. We have to ask our own hard questions, and we have to let Jesus meet us there so that we know in our hearts that he can. And, I entered ministry when I was 22 years old, right after I graduated from Moody. And the Lord has been so kind to me. and allowing me to do youth ministry right away, and to be able to do it for a lot of years. I just see that as like the kindness of God that has kept me. But in some ways, I feel like I missed getting to be a 20-year-old who was trying to follow Jesus and figuring that out because I was automatically put in a position of leadership. And at the church that I was at, like, I sat in the pastoral staff meetings as a ministry person in my church. And I was set up that way from the very beginning, and I loved it. And again, God has been so gracious to me. But also, I think that there were some points that I didn't get to struggle in being a 20-year-old, figuring out what it meant to walk with Jesus. And so I always encourage young leaders that we have to not be too busy. We have to not be too embarrassed of what those questions are, of what our struggles are. Because if we have not asked our own hard questions, if we have not really allowed time to dig into our own doubts, we'll never be able to do that in a genuine way to students, because we just naturally as humans, like, we are not going to go places. We're not going to start conversations of things that we don't know what the answer is. Yeah. We're not going to bring up topics that are unresolved in our own heart and in our own life. And I think in ministry, it's hard to sometimes have places to go with those questions. If you're struggling with something, if you're struggling, say, with the inerrancy of Scripture, who are you supposed to go to about that? I'm 27 years old. I'm learning more and more. And I'm like, oh man, do I really believe this? And as I try to figure it out, like, who am I supposed to talk to about that? I'm going to lose my job if I bring this up.
Yep.
I'm going to be put on probation. So better to just zip it up and keep it moving. And I think we need to look for those safe people in our life and in our ministry. And Eric, honestly, that's one of the reasons why I really do love, I think there's such a place for organizations like Momentum. Because it's like, okay, who's a safe person to talk to about some of this stuff and work it out?
Yep.
But I do think, I know that's a long answer, but it's one that's really just heavy on my heart, is like, we have to, before we try to create a culture where it's safe to ask questions, we have to have asked our own questions. And we have to have let Jesus meet us there. And then I think from there, it's creativity, like from there, it's creativity of like, okay, how do we create these spaces? How do we put systems in place where kids are always being asked what their questions are, where we're being preemptive as to the question that's in the room? Just different things like that. But once we deal with our hearts, then it's just creativity and program stuff and figuring it out from there.
I love that you're starting with us as leaders, just personally, emotionally. It makes me think of similar, my own journey, starting right out of college, having emotional unhealth in a lot of ways, of not necessarily knowing you're living in a world where you're working with teenagers. You may not yet be a parent. You may not have friends that are your own age. You're hanging out with teenagers all day. So it can be a challenge, right? And so having that emotional health, having a safe person and a place where you can take your own questions to be answered, to wrestle with, so to be reciprocal, that's a big deal. That really is a big deal. And you hit the nail on the head. Momentum does want to be a safe place for you in that. We have what we call Momentum Pro cohorts. So if you're a student pastor listening to this and you're interested in that, reach out to us. We'd love to put you in a community and an environment where you have like-minded people who are healthy and learning and trying to grow together. Yeah, for sure. That's very in line with what we're doing. Val, I think it's so funny when you look at, like, oftentimes youth pastors, youth leaders, they want to be intentional with students, but they ask terrible questions, right? Like, hey, how was your day? Good.
Right.
Did you learn anything at youth group tonight? No. Okay.
Well, I'm just going to go home. I'm going to go home.
Conversation over. Can I pray for you? Sure. Like,
Right, right.
so asking the right
Man,
questions is such a big deal. So for
yeah.
adults, for us as youth leaders, maybe parents listening to this, how do you help them craft good questions, or how do we know when we're asking the right questions maybe?
Yeah. Oh man. You know, I could what I could write a book on is like how to kill a conversation. So that's my specialty. So thank you for
There you go.
opening this up for me. I would say, you know, again through my own trial and error, don't give up. Don't give up. Sometimes you just feel so shut down by students, and just don't give up. Whatever they offer you, ask a follow up. Even I have asked students some of the most like ridiculous questions. You know, like the other day, a girl. I still volunteer in a youth group, but she had headphones on, and I was just, you know, headphones on in the middle of youth group, like or you know, during games. She did not want to talk to anybody. So I'm like, so what kind of headphones are these? Like, they look really cool.
Yeah. Was it like
You know, like,
over the ear
yeah,
headphones,
over
or
the
is it
ears.
like
Over
one
the ears.
AirPod in? Like,
Oh no, over the ears. You
okay.
know, so we start talking about that. But I would say, you know, so whatever you can, take whatever little nuggets are there and just work off of them. But my other favorite questions, like one of them is and maybe these are really basic and your listeners are like, yeah, Val, we know this. But one of them is, okay, so wait, tell me about yourself. Like, who lives in your house? And I have found the who lives in your house question
Yeah,
is like money.
that's
Just
good.
because like you learn so much about like that person's life by who is in their home. And it doesn't put kids on the spot who maybe don't live with their family, or it's not like, oh, tell me about your parents. It's like, well, I live with grandma, you know, like just something like that. But I think the who lives in your house question is great. And you usually hear about pets and you hear about
Yeah,
all kinds of stuff.
yeah,
So that's a fun one. And then even about their day at school, and this is just my personality, because you know, you kind of just have to lean into your own personality. So I know that this won't work for everybody, but I ask my youth group kids all the time coming in, I'm like, hey, how's school today? Anything weird happen? Anyone like throw up in class or like fall out of their chair? Anything good happen in school today?
yeah,
And it is funny how kids respond even to that type of question. You know, they'll be like, man, not really, but actually yesterday, this happened, you know, or, you know, it kind of breaks the ice as far as, you don't have to tell me like what you learned or that you had a quiz today, but like, what's the juicy stuff that
yeah,
happened at school today?
yep,
Like, that's what I want to know about.
yeah.
So
I love
even sometimes silly questions, like that, or we serve dinner at our youth group every single week. So even as kids are coming through the line,
mm,
sometimes, you know, we'll just pick a random question, and it can even be a stupid question, and we just make a joke of it, and every kid that comes through as we're serving, we're
yeah,
like, okay, so one cereal, you have to eat one cereal the rest of your life. What is it? You know, like just stuff like that. But
yes,
even the quietest kids and even the most withdrawn kids usually like will answer and will engage in the conversation that way.
yep,
So I think like it, just just going for it and willing to be like shut down by a couple of kids to know that like you'll probably hit 80% of them,
mm.
even if you still get shut down by a couple. Usually taking that first step and asking questions
Val,
is
I
a
think
valid approach.
that's so good. And honestly, like you and I, we had a conversation recently at a conference where, I want to kind of draw back on that a little bit for
Yeah,
our
yeah,
listeners, because what you do so naturally is often what is needs to be learned for others. And so what you're giving us here is a model of ask students that you don't know, that you're longing to engage in a relationship with them, an easy question. What cereal, if you had to eat one cereal for the rest of your life, eh, what would it be?
yeah.
Every single student can answer that question,
Right,
right?
right.
But what you're going to do is you're engaging them in conversation. And
Right,
then maybe the next week you see them, you're asking them like, hey, what was the best thing about your week? You know,
right.
And now they're starting to talk to you about something that's a little more personal.
Right.
And maybe you're going to get the off the wall, like, yes, a kid threw up in class,
Right.
or
Right.
maybe you're going to get well, and even the who lives at home question. Now
Mhm.
you're getting deeper, and now you're allowing them space to get a little more personal because they're trusting you. That's creating that culture.
Yeah.
It's I like to call it head, heart, hands, right? You're giving
Yeah.
them a head. Everybody can ask it. What's just
Mhm.
the answer off the top of your head? Cinnamon Toast Crunch, right? That's the cereal, whatever. And then now you're getting deeper. Who lives in your home? My parents got divorced recently, so now I just live with my mom.
Right. Right.
Oh, tell me about. Now you're drilling deeper into heart level, emotional level, and then you get into how can I pray for you? Can I pray for you? Can I pray for you? So Val, you just do that so naturally, and even you answering those questions, I'm like listening to you through that grid, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this
Right.
is so good. Like,
Well,
yeah,
trial and error, trial and error. And I would say too, I mean, not to like, take the serial question, way beyond where it's supposed to go, but I think sometimes too, kids will give you little data points.
mm,
They'll be like, oh, it's Cinnamon Toast Crunch, but I only eat it at my dad's house. Okay. Now I know but my mom doesn't buy that cereal for me, so I only have it at my dad's.
yes,
Okay. Even if you're like, okay, now you're down the line, but that's a really
that's
super
good.
important data point
Mm,
for us to know in a way that whether even we ask them if we can pray or not, or what exactly the situation is, for us to tuck away and say, okay,
yeah,
that kid just gave me a piece of their
mm,
world.
mm,
They trusted me with a piece of their world.
mm. That
And it's great stuff to build off of.
it's so good. It's so good. Do you think that students will ask us as adults questions? Because I know that's ultimately what your
Yeah.
goal and passion and mission is all about. But do you think that students will ask us as adults questions if we have engaged with them first, or do you think that they're just like, hey, you're the youth pastor, I got a question, let me ask you? Like, how
No.
does that,
Yeah.
how have you seen that play out, and how the level of degree of difficulty maybe that questions ask us, like how do we reciprocate that kind of in that creating that culture of question asking?
Yeah. That, my friend, is a great question. Add it to my list. I would say, man, it's kind of both. Like, I think that a student sometimes
Yeah.
will understand that you are like the authority or the quote the expert on something,
Mhm.
and they might go to you as the expert in the field that they have a question about.
Mm.
Just like a kid doesn't need to have like a personal relationship with their math teacher to go and ask a math question. They might be like, hey, Mr. Eric, I was thinking about this and this and this, and why did Jesus pick Judas if he knew he'd betray him?
Right.
Like, sometimes I think they'll just come to you with their questions because you are the quote authority, you know?
Right.
Um, but I would say a lot of times those questions are more knowledge based kind of
Mm.
questions. Like, you're the authority on math, and so I come to you with my math question. You're the Bible guy, you're the pastor, so I like come to you about my Bible question. But I would say the real heart stuff, the deeper stuff, the stuff that reveals doubt or struggle or their
Mm.
personal life or what they're wrestling with. I would say that those questions more often happen in the context of real relationship.
Mm.
And I would say within real relationship, but then also within an environment of um, invitation to
Mm.
ask those types of questions, that you're not afraid of those types of questions. Like, we can talk about this kind of stuff. So I think that it doesn't, it's not like, oh, you have to have this really deep relationship with a kid before they'll ask you anything. But I think even a sincere invitation or making yourself available for those things, I think kids
Mm.
respond to also.
Mm.
Um,
Good.
yeah, I'm just thinking about like one of the reasons, honestly. So one of the goals of our project is to create a big database, which was gonna, database is my word, but it's gonna be a YouTube channel.
Nice.
of like a whole bunch of little snippets of questions that students have asked in short, like 3 to 4 minute answers, and just have a whole pages of that type of stuff so a student can go there. Because one of my burdens is, and I saw this, I was at I've been at a small youth group, real small, and I've been at a big youth group. And the types of questions that students are really asking, the types of things that are really on their heart, only a small percentage of kids are going to come up to me and ask those questions, but everybody has them. Everyone has questions about sexuality. All these kids do. All these kids have questions about the LGBT community and how we're supposed to treat them and why does the church treat them this way or whatever. But only a small percentage of kids that are articulate, have a relationship, are confident enough to come up and talk to an adult about that, are ever going to approach me, even at my own youth group. So how do we be proactive in making sure, much less like kids in public schools who need the message of what Jesus says about these hard things. So how do we be proactive too in saying like that we invite those types of questions and we are willing to have those types of conversations?
So let's flip the script on that a little bit and go there.
Yeah.
We've talked about like, it's hard when you ask a student a question and maybe they brush you off because you didn't ask a great question. And you're, as the adult, you're longing for the deeper connection. You're longing to get to know the student.
Yeah.
What do you do when a student asks a tough question and the adult has a brush off answer? Maybe they answer it too quick. Maybe they just come back with a symbol like, I don't know. What does that do to the relationship? What do you help us with that?
Yeah.
Help us go there.
Okay. So I am a huge fan of like, we can't be making stuff up to kids, right? Like we can't just like, if we don't know, we gotta say we don't know. So we gotta be honest in that regard too. We're not trying to make stuff up. But this is like slightly controversial. I'm just gonna bring it here. I hope that's okay.
Go for it.
But we always say like, and if you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know, and I'll get back to you. And I'm like, yes, you should do that. But you know what's better? Is knowing the answer and engaging with them in conversation about it right there in the moment. Because we all know that there is like a sweet spot. And I know that sounds harsh. We're going to have to use that every once in a while. But I think that sometimes we use that as our escape hatch. And we're like, ooh, because we all know that we've said that and we haven't come back and had that conversation. Or we try to come back and honor that we said we'd have that conversation, but the kid is like playing dodgeball now. And then their mom picked them up right away. And like the conversation just never happens. The kid's not in the mood to talk, whatever. But I just think like, especially with teenagers, I think this is true of adults, but especially of teenagers, but like if their heart cracks open and they're willing to ask that question, we have to, I think we've got to ask Jesus to help us be ready in that moment when their heart is soft, when it's on their mind, when they've got the time to talk about it, to go there with that kid. And there are a couple, I've gathered, a couple thousand questions already. The trends, some of them are surprising. Most of them will not be surprising to anybody who works with teenagers. There's a couple major topics that like, we got to be ready to talk to kids about. We've got to know like the sexual ethic of Christianity backwards and forwards so that we could explain it to anybody in a way that is winsome and shows the goodness of Jesus, not just the rules of it. Like there's a couple, and I have not always been able to do that. That's like why that's one of the things like that has motivated me to do the work that I'm doing now. But to say like, okay, it's so good to be ready in those moments to have those conversations. And when we don't know, to try to give them something. There's usually something around there that we do know to be like, hey, do you know what? I've never thought about that before, but I know this about God. I know this about God. And I know that Jesus did this. So I'm going to think about it more, but that's my start. That's where I'm going to start from. So let's talk about this again.
That's good.
To offer them something.
That's good.
And I would say too, like, to not just like given it, say we do know the answer. we talk about this a ton in the training that I do.
Mhm.
But I'm like, there's a reason the kid is asking this question.
Yep.
Fine. If you can do some digging around the question first to figure out why are they asking it and what's their real question,
Mhm.
and try to make it into a conversation, not just a question and an answer. Oh my goodness. I just feel like you'll get so much further
Mhm.
than if you're just like, I know that one. Yes. And
Yeah.
answer them right
So
from the start.
go deeper in there.
Yeah.
Let's say hypothetically a student comes. Well, let me even explain this. So I have two children. They're 8 and 6. Right. My son this past year, he came home from school and he goes, "Dad, what are swear words?"
Yes.
And I'm like, "Oh boy." Like I'm now having this moment of panic and anxiety because I'm like, is he asking me what are they? Like, does he want me
Like,
to
does you
list
want me
them
to list
out?
them?
Or is he asking me like in general in theory? So like, but to your point, what you just said with my 8-year old, he was 7. I had to ask context, right? Buddy,
Mm-hmm.
what do you mean? And he goes,
Right.
well, the bus driver said we're not allowed to say swear words on the bus. And then he goes, I don't know what they are. I won't know if I said a swear word. And I'm like, oh my word. So
Sweet
I
baby.
like gulped and then I just listed them. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I want matter of fact. He's asking a matter of fact question, right?
Right. Right.
So context was key there,
Mm-hmm.
but I just listed them out. Well, buddy, they're, and I said, and he goes, okay, and he walked away. And I think that built trust with my son
Mm-hmm.
because we've had now we've been able to have other conversations
Yeah.
about bad words and about things that are inappropriate. And so
Yeah.
to that degree, when students come
Totally.
and ask us, hey, do you think God hates gay people?
Correct.
Well, now teach us here what kind of
Oh
things
man.
do you
Yeah.
do with the training
Yeah.
to ask the deeper question, to understand context? I agree with you that there's something deeper going on in the student's mind
Yeah.
and heart
Yeah.
with their emotional. There's a reason that they're asking you this question.
Correct.
How do you help draw that out of them?
Yeah. 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 I was gonna say in that exact question, um, are they asking because they think that they might be gay and they've come to youth group for the first time and they're like, am I going to be able to belong here? Are people going to look down on me? Is their sister, did their
Mhm.
sister just come out and they're wondering if I come to this church, am I going to be able to get like, am I going to have to like not have a relationship with my sister? Did their dad just leave for a man?
Mm.
These are different. They are, if we have the doctrine that we know is true, what God's word teaches, and we're confident in that, we know it.
Yep.
But pastorally, it's a different route to the answer, depending on why they're asking.
Mm.
And I think that is like our privilege as ministers of the gospel, whether you are a paid youth worker, whether you are a parent, whether you are a volunteer, if you are a member of the body of Christ, we are ministers of the gospel to each other. And I think that is our privilege to be able to walk that road with students. And I think you can, again, you can make it as complicated or as not complicated as you want. I actually had this exact question. I was driving kids home from youth group a couple months ago. They get in my car, their seatbelts aren't even on yet. And they're like, Ms. Val, we got a question for you. Can you be gay and be a Christian? And I just started by like, and I'm like going through my own like, rubric of stuff. And I told them, like, this is not rocket science. I told them, I'm like, okay, I'm totally going to answer your question, but you tell me first, like, why are you asking? How did it come up? How did you think of it? And they right away, they're like, okay, well, we were talking about it at our table. And I just, one youth leader said this, and I was just wondering what you would think too. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, what did he say? What did he say? We're going to get to it. Don't you worry. Like, I'm going to answer your question. But
Yes.
I think even telling him that, not like that you're dodging the question, but even saying like, hey, we're going to get to your question. I promise I'm going to answer it. But wait, hang on.
Yeah.
Give me some context first. Why are
Yes.
you asking? I think it can truly be as easy as that. Another thing that we talk about is um, whatever the student gives us in the wording of their question,
Mm,
they usually give away some of their values. They usually give away what some of their presuppositions are, what they believe to
mhm,
be true.
mhm,
They usually, not always, but a lot of times, like there's certain things we can start to piece together
mm,
just by the way that they ask the question. And I will tell you that, like, even in the student questions that I receive, sometimes I just that,
mm,
like, I'm so moved by them, but they're so raw and they're like so the wrong question. But I
mm.
feel like the wrong questions like give us so much information about where this kid is actually at.
Yeah.
Like, even this is silly, but I got one question that was like, how did Jesus decide on the 10 commandments? And I'm like, okay, hang on. Let's, but what does that tell me? That tells me that like this kid has some exposure, but not a lot of exposure. Like, okay, we're talking low biblical literacy. That's fine. But like now I kind of can start to piece together how in the world I'm going to answer this question. Um, and so I think even in how kids ask the question, we can start to like take some of those building blocks and put together where they're actually coming from and what the wisest way to answer that question is.
Yes. Oh, that's really good. Um, oh my word, that's good. I like that because context is key.
Yeah,
Even their tone of voice, right, and how they're asking it.
totally.
So in
Yes.
that scenario you just gave, as the students are getting in the car and they're like, "Hey, we just want to know what you think,"
Yeah.
versus if they come to you, and say, "Hey, can we talk?" And you're
Right.
like, "Sure, what's going on?" And then they go, "Can we?" And they like draw you away from the larger group,
Right. Right.
and they're like whispering almost like, "Hey, what
Mhm.
what do you?" Well, that's a totally different context clue, right? That's going to
Yeah.
help you understand. And I
Yeah.
love what you're saying. Even that shepherd's heart of how do you respond? How do you answer the question? Your rubric, your theology, the answer isn't different, but how you get there should be.
Great.
And so, Val, I love that because that it doesn't matter if you're a parent, if you're a pastor, if you're a senior pastor, if an adult corners you after the sermon, it does.
Right.
Whatever hard question you're being asked in whatever your ministry context is, these are practical
Yeah.
applicational tools that you're going to need to think through.
There,
So good.
I think about this all the time. So there's a apologist. His name's Abdu Murray. He has some great material, but one of the things he says all the time, and I quote him constantly, is
Mm,
he says, "We don't answer questions, we answer people."
mm,
And I'm like, if that is not, you read through the Gospels, Jesus is, oh, it's like question and answer day every day in Jesus' ministry. And yet it's so funny because you look and Jesus rarely directly answers a question. You know, he's always, I think, seeing the whole person,
mm,
walking with them, addressing what's going on inside their heart.
mm,
And I think that that's so challenging to me when
mm,
when I read the Gospels and I see how Jesus interacts with people. But
mhm,
I love that quote by Abdu Murray that we don't answer questions, we answer
mm.
people.
That's really good. Well, Val, let's do this. Let's have a part 2 to this conversation, because
Great.
I definitely think that even where you're foreshadowing for the next episode, we can look further into Jesus and how he answered some questions. And I know that our listeners are going to want to hear from you, even on what some of those topics are
Yeah.
that you've categorized your questions into, and how that can help impact our ministry. So let's do a part 2.
Cool. Let's do it. Let's do
Game?
it.
All right.
Thanks,
Well,
Eric.
to our listeners, that'll end this conversation, part 1. Check back next week for part 2 of this conversation with Valerie O'Brien from Aspen Ministry. Thanks so much for tuning in. We hope that you have a great day. Again, Momentum Ministry Partners exists to help you have maximum impact for God's kingdom in your church. So, as always, if there are questions that we can help you wrestle with, if there are people that we can interview, if if there is any way, shape, or form that we can add value to you and your ministry, please let us know. We'd love nothing more than to do that for you and be a resource. All right, thanks so much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode. We hope you found it to be valuable. And if you did, would you share it with someone else in your network who might enjoy it? Also, would you please go on and subscribe, rate, and review it? That way you don't miss any more and somebody else will be able to find it too. Also, because we want to be your trusted resource, if you have a question or topic that you would like us to discuss on an upcoming episode, send that to us via email to info@buildmomentum.org, or you can send us a DM on any of our social media platforms. You can find us there at Momentum Ministry Partners. Also, if you need more information on our ministry, be sure to check out our website at buildmomentum.org. Thank you so much, and we hope to see you next time.